Hello and welcome to the Modern Nurse Podcast. My name is Emily Knife, and I have somebody very important and special here today in the nursing world, Maggie Ortiz. She is the advocate for nurses. She's been a nurse forever, and we're going to talk about that. And so, welcome to the show, Maggie. It's so exciting to have you here today.
Thank you there, modern nurse Emily. Thank you for reaching out and connecting with me. Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. And we're so excited. Maggie's going to be speaking at Modern Nurse Fest in October, and we'll get more into that. But we're going to get into some nitty gritty here, especially if you're a new nurse, a student nurse, or even a veteran nurse. We have something for everybody today on today's podcast because we are going to talk about legal nursing and covering your ass, basically. So let's go ahead and get into that. So, Maggie, go ahead and tell us how you even got into being an advocate for nurses.
Well, thank you for asking. So, like I said, I've been a nurse for a long time. I had my associate's degree first. So, I've been a practicing nurse for 24 years, spent 22 years at the bedside. Started with my associates, ICU, ER, pre-op, PACU, endo, IR, cath lab. I joke around everywhere but labor and delivery. That was by choice. Um, After about 15 years, I did a bridge. I did my bachelor's to master's. Most of us, if you don't know, if you're newer, oftentimes if you work at a magnet facility, it can limit your ability to move up. So I chose to, if I was going to go back to school at 15 years, to just get my master's in leadership. But as you'll soon find out, I don't fit that bill. I've never been in leadership because I don't fit that bill. But all acute care primarily. I've done surgery centers, travel, local, insert, whatever it is. And then I did spend time at a board of nursing. I was trained to investigate nurses. So I went to formal national training, went back to that entity, was taught how to use the rules and regulations in my state to investigate a nurse, to write up the orders, all the stuff. I only spent a short period of time there because I felt like it was not just nor fair. Left that and have been helping nurses and their legal teams for like the last decade. But like you alluded to, I did cross over to different types of legal nursing, which we're going to talk about more in depth in the during the Modern Nurse Fest. But so I am a legal nurse. I've been an expert for civil litigation. I've been an expert for administrative litigation. And then, like I said, I was a prior investigator for a board of nursing. So I no longer practice at the bedside. I just advocate for nurses now. So hopefully that answered that. That was pretty long-winded, sister.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Yeah. You have so much great experience, and no wonder why you're such a great legal nurse is because you have all that experience behind you. And so, what was like the jumping over the cliff moment that you were like, I really need to help nurses. I need to help advocate for nurses.
It was the time of the board of nursing when I
Yeah.
was there and I was seeing what I felt, what I now know to be what is under our constitutional right under due process. And I became a civil expert and I saw that that due process was extended to people under the civil litigation realm, but not under administrative, which is now I know well spoken about, and research that up. So that was my breaking point when I saw nurses that I didn't feel like we were even asking for their response. And I was like, wait, what? What? Wait, hold on. And that was my breaking point. I just couldn't. And then when I found out when I left that entity that no one oversees any board across the United States, then I was fire engine mad. Then I knew I had to start acting. And so I went to my representatives. I have made some change in my own state. So I independently became an advocate for our profession, going down to my capital as just a nurse, as Maggie. And then I branched out, created advocates for nurses because I then wanted to help nurses and their legal teams when they were under investigation. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always feel like there's a cliff jumping moment that every nurse has that sends them forward into really kind of diving more into their passion, really what they're meant to do. So that being said, you have this just so profound experience with nurses. So what are some things, because I feel like nurses probably get caught off guard when maybe the board contacts them or their license is in jeopardy because we don't really get that education in nursing school. We're handed this license, we take this test, we get this awesome license, and it has so many rules and regulations surrounding it, but often we're not taught really any of those rules and regulation, or even understanding the whole book that it comes with. So, what's some kind of stories that you have been involved with nurses that they're kind of caught off guard, and what was their reaction, and how did you help them out?
Sure. So just doubling down on what you said, yes, we do not get taught enough about the rules and regulations as they dictate our professional license. Nurses do not understand nor they know, and I don't know that any provider does, and it doesn't matter what license you hold, you are practicing under three types of law: civil, criminal, and administrative. Administrative is the board of nursing. So oftentimes when a nurse gets a letter from a board of nursing, no, they're shocked, they're upset, they're crying. It's a they have their shame regardless if they felt like they did or did not do the conduct. So it's extremely overwhelming, and then they don't even know what to do. The letter can say, let's just say, for example, Melanie or Emily, let's just say you give 100 milligrams of morphine unintentionally to a patient. You go through a peer review. Not every state has peer review. Texas does have peer review under nursing law. Your organization extends you the courtesy of a peer review. There are 6 people who come together, not only just nurses, who look at the conduct, what you did, look at the medical record. They question you, they ask you questions. They do look at that and they say, well, this does rise to now the level we need to report to the board of nursing. They tell you, we are sending this on over to the board of nursing. They send it to the board of nursing. The next thing the nurse gets is a letter in the mail that says on or about, let's just say, September 19th at whatever, while you were employed as an RN at Sunnyvale Hospital, you did this to patient A. This is the violation. And now we want your response within 30 days.
That's
And now you don't
scary.
even have the medical record. And so this is when I get involved. And
Yeah.
this is when you should be getting legal counsel. And we're going to talk about that, but everyone needs to have professional liability insurance. When you're in nursing school, I already know that they make you get it. So just continue that policy when you step on out. Because when it comes down to the nutcracking, honestly, you are 98% more likely to stand in front of a board of nursing than you are those other two types of law. That's from the lawyer from the ANA. That's not me making that statistic up. So along with that letter, and now you've been terminated possibly, you're not working. And now you know what the lawyer cost? Money.
Yeah.
And you know what you don't have because you don't have a job. And now you're having a situational mental health issue, right? And now, I just got off a phone with a nurse and she was crying and she's like, I can't work. I'm like, baby, you can, and you're going to have to, right? But you're going to have to get back up on the horse. But she's got her letter that she's trying to respond to. But do you see what I mean? And if you don't have professional liability insurance, when you go to reach out for that lawyer, go ahead and send me my $5,000 retainer. Most nurses don't have that kind of money. And oftentimes they're not going to take credit. They want a check for cash for that retainer while you're under investigation. So you see how that just became this huge animal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm stressed out and I'm not even in trouble
I
for it. Like just
know.
even walking through that, that's so scary. It's so scary and it's something we don't even, I remember taking like a ethics and law class, maybe like one class, and I blew it off because I was just like, oh, the teacher
It's
was
not
really
us.
boring. Yeah,
It's not us. It's
I
not
was
us.
just
We
like,
learn what we have to know for the test. We
yeah,
pass the test and then we come back out into nursing because we're not criminals, but
yeah.
we just have to memorize what we need to know for the test, just like we did the ears, the
Mhm.
bones, all the stuff, but we're not criminals. And I say that as well.
Yeah.
Did you take that in Texas?
Ohio.
Ohio. What
Yeah.
was that in school or was that for CE?
It was in school. It was just like a quick class, and I think all I really remember was like the salts and a tort. Like that's what I took
Yeah.
away from, that. But yeah,
It-
it wasn't really talked like nursing licensure wasn't really talked about. It was more surrounding like the criminal aspect, like,
yeah.
the 3 different types of laws, but it focused more on like what's an assault, what's a tort, here's the judicial process, but it wasn't really focused on like what's your scope of practice, how if you break a law what happens, so I'm so glad you're doing this for nurses because holy crap, we need this education, to cover our own asses like you were talking about with the professional liability insurance. I stopped that when I graduated nursing school because I was like, why? I don't understand why I need it. And then when I got into home health and I was going into people's homes and things like driving and things like that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting it back, but I shouldn't have never canceled it, like you were saying.
Yeah. And you can write that off on your taxes. The other
Okay.
thing that I tell nurses, because they ask, like, who do you recommend?
Yeah.
Start with your own home insurance and car insurance, because you know what they want? Your money.
Yeah.
So if they underwrite for professional liability insurance, you might even get a discount, honestly, right? They're more than happy to add on another policy if they underwrite for it. So call your own home or car insurance. And then here's the other clincher. Number two, folks, please listen to this. You want to ask if they underwrite for a nurse. So hear me out. So I get put under investigation or there's civil litigation. Now I'm going to need what? A nurse to give their opinion in my same or similar circumstance, who now charges $300 to $600 an hour to give their opinion in written form. Now I just went back to, do you have money for that? So if you do not, and if your insurance company does not underwrite for an RN, I'm not talking about an NP, I'm not talking about an MD. More often than not, they already underwrite for a licensed independent practitioner, but for the RN, for the LPN, they may not underwrite. And now you need an expert to give your opinion because you're not qualified to give your own opinion about your conduct. I know that seems like a logical argument, but you will provide your response, but you're not considered the expert to give your opinion on the conduct because you're the one under investigation or being questioned about said conduct. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't know that until like
Right now,
a couple
I
of
didn't
years
find
ago.
this
And
out
right now,
until
yeah.
like a year ago. Kevin Stansberg, if you don't follow my boy Kevin, love Kevin. He actually brought that to my attention, and then because I didn't realize that either, but I do know as an expert they have to pay my fees. Now I've been a civil expert, so I know that, you know, that normally comes from the insurance company. The check is cut to me because I'm unbiased.
Yeah.
Whenever you're an expert, I talk about this in my intro to legal nursing course, right? Anytime you do any kind of legal nursing, you are always unbiased, just like you are as a nurse. We are ethical and moral in everything that we do, because what we just talked about being reported to a board of nursing, and I know I'm getting all over the place, but even as a legal nurse, you can and will be disciplined by a board of nursing as an expert nurse, and I've seen it. We never take money outside of doing things ethically and morally, if that makes sense. But getting back to, yes, you got to have professional liability insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, coming in, as a new nurse, and I've even seen working with new grads, many of the times they'll throw it back on the doctor or the hospital, like, oh, the hospital told me to do this, or the doctor told me to do this. And I think it's really important that we hit on this point because like you have a license, girlfriend, like you've got to understand and wrap your head around like you are now practicing as like kind of your own entity, in a sense. So, could you kind of expand on why it's important for nurses to take responsibility for their actions and not throw it onto some hospital or some doctor that maybe yelled at them that morning? So, what can you kind of talk about
Sure.
in
Oh,
regards to that?
I love this topic, and it's actually, the word is duty, and
Yeah.
that's a big loaded word. It's not just our responsibility; it's absolutely our duty. In the state of Texas, position statement that was passed in 1983, and I'm going to quote, it says, and I'm quoting: "I have a duty to the patient that supersedes a hospital policy or a physician order." Let me say that again. My position statement says that I have a duty to the patient that supersedes a hospital policy or physician order. And I have to tell physicians this all the time. I am a registered nurse, doctor. I do not practice under your license. I'm not an MA and I'm not a rad tech, which my husband's a rad tech and I have mad respect for rad techs, scrubbed in the cath lab, but I am not an extension of your license, doctor, like they are. Like an AA, a MA, a rad tech, I am an RN and I work unsupervised. I'm not an LPN. You're not delegating stuff to me that is not within my scope of practice. Even LPNs,
Yeah.
you are not allowed to the doctor just said, no, 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 no. The board of nursing will smack you down. People have this illusion every time, like when we're going to go stand in front of the board of nursing or go to a conference, whatever, like their attorney's going to like say, oh, you're going to plead the fifth. I said, what? Plead the fifth in front of the board of nursing? That's non-existent. Your attorney will not, he can say objection or she can say objection all they want. You will still be asked the question, nurse, what did you do or do not? And if you choose not to answer that question, it's a privilege to hold a professional license. They will revoke your license. I don't know and I'm not telling you it's not fair nor just, but well, I tell the doctor, no, I cannot do that. I do not let doctors text me on my personal phone. If they have my personal phone numbers, because we take STEMI call together. And if you dare put any patient information in there, I am going to close the space between us once. And I'm going to give you one opportunity to, tell you how this is going to happen. And then I'm writing up an incident report and I'm reporting you to the medical board, because you're not going to rope me into litigation. I know what my license says. And when they say things like, you practice under me, or, it's okay, it's not a big deal. It is a big deal, sir, because I will have to stand in front of my board to defend my conduct. And I'm not allowed to say Dr. Smith, Dr. whatever. That's not how this works. I will get smacked down and said, I'm so sorry, nurse. What did you say again? And then I think I showed you the book earlier. If you don't have your own, this is mine. This is the board of rules and regulations for my state board of nursing. And anyone, this is not unique to me. Every nurses association, normally for money, will during like their annual meetings, will take that book and bind it right into something that a nurse can buy. I think this last one that I went to this a couple months ago was $60. So I highly encourage every nurse to get this. One of the nurses who follows me on TikTok, he literally printed this out, put it in a binder, and like highlighted stuff, did a video, was showing me. I was like, I'm so
proud. That's so good. Such a good student.
And honestly, they're like, that whole book, no, baby, no. Grounds for discipline, standards of practice, and unprofessional conduct. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3 sections. Why do you care as a nurse how the school got approved? You don't. Why do you care how the board all comes together? You don't. What do you care about? Those 3 sections that I just told you. Because if you are investigated, you know what the RN investigator, what I was doing, I was looking into those 3 sections to see what you violated. That's the only thing that's applicable to you. So back to your question, nurses, and I don't feel like nursing schools, our profession in general gives us enough education about the rules and regulations that dictate our professional license. Mm-hmm. Right? We all know who Redonda is. At that same conference, right? I was standing there with her, right? She had no idea that she was going to be, charged with reckless homicide of an impaired adult when she gave a drug. Now, I'm not defending some of her stuff, but where should she have stood only in front of a board of nursing? She shouldn't have stood in these other 2. I'm sorry, civilly, yes, they should have wrote the family a check, right? But not criminal, right? And so her board of nursing the first time around said that she did nothing wrong, which I find to be very interesting. Wow. The second time around, they did discipline her because she had been arrested at this point. So I got around to a lot of long stuff, but holding a professional license is a big, huge deal. And if you don't know the word duty, that is the big loaded word that binds us to a patient. The 4 elements are duty, breach of duty, causation, and damages. The board of nursing doesn't care about damages. There doesn't have to be any damages when it comes to the board of nursing. It will be, did you have a duty? Did you breach that duty? That's it. Did you establish a nurse-patient relationship? If you established a nurse-patient relationship and there was a breach of duty, we're done. That's considered if you deviate from the standard of care, that is the threshold at the board of nursing. So I hope that answered your question, sister.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's so many good points in that conversation, and, just, you can't really fathom, to be honest, like what that process looks like unless you've been through it. Right. And so, what are some resources if nurses do run into this situation that the board has sent them the letter and now they're like, oh shit, what do I do? And now they're crying and they've gone into a full-on panic attack. What are some resources? I know you have a really awesome course, is it intro into legal nursing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good way, but what's something quick, like, right? Like if I got a
call
letter,
me,
I'm like,
call
oh,
me, call me. My number's everywhere. You can book time on my calendar, because those are the things that we need to talk about. Because like, when do you have to have your response? We need to get you legal representation. If you have professional liability insurance, some of those it is the shock. And so I have resources. So I offer like educational resources for a nurse who's under investigation, separate from, like you touched on, the introduction to legal nursing, Those is if you're trying to transition over to legal nursing. But I do offer those two separate things. But if a nurse gets a letter from a board of nursing, then yes, 100% reach out to me so that we can get you on the path. And nurses have reached out to me, and their response to the allegation was the next day. And I'm like, it's okay, stop. It's going to be okay. We can just write them a little, what I mean? And then it helps. I've never seen a board come back and say no. And then it gives us enough time so I can provide them with the resources. We can find some legal counsel, but you shouldn't be responding to the board unless you have your full and complete file. But that's stuff that we talk about initially over the 30 minutes, because I try not. But it's just like I'm trying to spit everything out in 30 minutes to try to give them as much as they need and try to save them money. And you know what I mean? But that's not oftentimes good for them. So we can set up multiple conversations. But yes, reach out to me. It doesn't matter if it was due yesterday. There are still options oftentimes. And as a mental health nurse, it becomes it just makes them like to say it just like cripples them.
Yeah.
And it's like when you become a nurse and people are knowing and it's something, and I don't even know how to explain it honestly. When we become a nurse, it's like we change, and there's so much that title means, and that we tie ourselves to that and we forget that we're a person outside of that, or we identify so much for that. So when you get that letter, it's like it's coming at you, the person. Does that make sense? And it's
Yeah.
taken so very personal,
Yeah.
and it's helping the nurse kind of unpack that, regardless if they did or did not do the conduct, right?
Right.
Because no one works in a vacuum. Even if you did do something, it's okay, right? It's okay. No one is perfect, but you got to start moving in the direction of dismantling this. And it can be 2 to 3 years of your life. And we got to get some resources on board to start to help you so that you manage this. But that's a great question. And I never want a nurse to be alone. So I do have a Facebook group. I have resources because I just try to put nurses with other nurses. And then Kristen, has Wispan, WISPAN. She's a nurse who has her own story, who I highlighted in July in my subscription. And she has free resources as well. She hosts a group, and I don't want to misquote her. I can't remember if it's weekly or monthly, and anyone can join. She has for substance use disorder or mental health. You can just log in and be anonymous, and no one has to know who you are. But that's a resource as well. I send nurses there. I encourage them to come to my Facebook group. I encourage them to post anonymous in my own group. I encourage them to connect with any of the nurses in the group, because oftentimes they just need someone else to listen to them. Oftentimes I'm not even saying anything.
Yeah.
They just need to, you're a mental health person. I'm not so much. And that's sometimes where I struggle, because I can help you draft up some stuff. I can help you, but it's some of this other stuff that nurses do have the hardest time with, putting down some of the shame, putting down this stuff. So thank you for asking. That is a big deal. And if you have any other, suggestions or resources, I tell nurses, I give them the hotline for, suicide prevention and some of that stuff. Unfortunately, nurses have taken their lives when they've been under investigation or somewhere in the process. And that's a lot.
Yeah.
So any resource that you could suggest as well. So the biggest thing is I try to get them to, get some mental health stuff, or I ask about the resources in their life right now, because I know that this could be a 2 to 3 year long situation. They don't know that, but I do. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think that's so important. So, if you are a nurse, or if you're new, even if a students sometimes get in trouble as well. You're not, privy to not being investigated as a student. When I went to school, I was with a student, and she was investigated, and she was not able to get her nursing license, right? So, make sure you call Maggie. That's like the first step. Don't go to your local news station and blurt about everything. Don't call your family and friends. Like, literally just call Maggie first, and she will
Exactly.
get you the proper resources. So what are, like, not going to the news station, not telling your business to everybody, what are some other things that we shouldn't do when we get into this situation? Like, how can we protect ourselves?
Sure. So first and foremost, so let's just say you're in, just for all intents and purposes, a hospital setting. There's conduct that's questioned. If you're in a state that does have peer review, ask for a peer review. That's your right under the policy. The state has, and I only know 2 states, Texas and New Mexico, under nursing law. So under the rules and regulations that dictate the nursing board. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not all states are required, but our state does, 2 states. So if you're one of those 2 states, go to your leadership, or, you start with your chain of command, your nursing manager. You don't go right to the top and just say, I realize that said conduct, but I would like to have a peer review if that's something you want. And then ask to go through that peer review process. If they send you all the way up to the board of nursing and the board of nursing reaches out to you, you don't talk to them. Right? You get legal representation. You do not answer the board of nursing because they're writing down everything against you. Now you're going to comply and you're going to reach back out and say, I did receive your communication, but I'm seeking legal counsel. So if I'm going to need you to send me my letter or whatever it is. And every state is different. Some states are more just than others. I have seen states primarily on the East Coast where it doesn't necessarily start with an allegation where they send you a letter. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
It starts with maybe the investigator reaching out to you, which I think is fair and just to say, hey, Emily, what the crab cakes. So your job is saying that this happened. I'm going to send you some basic medical records around the conduct. They're saying that 100 milligrams that you gave. I'm going to send you some basic information about that in the medical record, which you documented. And then I want us to sit down and talk. And I want you to tell me what happened. I find that to be fair and just, but you still got to have a lawyer there with you. You don't go by yourself. You don't talk to them by yourself, because what do nurses love to do? Story tell. And I'm like, stop talking right now. Stop talking. Stop talking. That's not what they asked you. Why are you talking about a body temperature when they're talking about a respiratory rate, nurse? No, stop talking. Right. So you don't also open yourself up for other stuff, because as a nurse, you may see some stuff but that's, what are they alleging against you? You're only answering what they're alleging against you with the evidence that they're providing. So if they're saying that you gave this, and you and I both know we've slept since you had dinner last night.
Right. Yeah.
And so do you remember who or what you did? So don't be speaking about something that you don't have independent memory of. I'm going to need to see a medical record. That is standard in other types of litigation, not necessarily in administrative litigation. So you don't talk to the board. You get a letter, you reach out, you get legal counsel, you reach out to Maggie, and then we start unpacking that. And then let's talk about another thing. You get called in the office. You're being, let's just say, written up for conduct that you don't agree with. Let's just say maybe even being terminated. Why are you signing something that's not true? I don't care if they're going to terminate you. Why are you signing something? No, nurses are not allowed to harass other nurses. If your nursing leader is bullying and harassing you, that is also considered unprofessional conduct and reportable to a board of nursing. We don't do that. No, if your nursing leader truly has question about your conduct, then yes, it's their duty to ask you about that and to question you, because they have to protect all the patients. Right. But it's not, no, do you or do you not have evidence? And they're not supposed to be just randomly alleging stuff against you, right? With some of this high school stuff that we do see, right? No. So do not sign a write-up if it's not true nor valid. A third thing that I see nurses do, they go under peer review and then they resign. So right then and there, let me tell you what's going to happen. So a peer review is a process to review a nurse's conduct because there's concerns about that conduct. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if the nurse leaves that organization, then that nurse cannot be peer reviewed. Does that make sense? Because you're no longer their employee. Right. So what does that nurses do? So it comes down to the CNO, the nursing leadership, right? So what's the duty of that nurse leader? It will then have to come to that nurse leader's purview. It may not be because nurses get peer reviewed every day, right? The nursing leader would just get the result of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But once that nurse chose to leave, before they got that peer review and we're questioning that nurse's conduct, what's that nursing leader's responsibility? To let the board of nursing know now. Yeah. So now that there's no peer review, it just automatically goes to the board of nursing because you left that organization. And now that nursing leader does have to let someone know that there was questionable conduct that they were trying to question you about, but you resigned. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an automatic report to the Board of Nursing. That nursing CNO has a duty to protect the public, right? The CNO has different rules and regulations that dictates to them. So don't be leaving before you have your peer review, because that will more likely than not be an automatic report to the Board of Nursing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's so important for nurses to understand, when you do receive a letter, you receive a call, you're going to go through kind of like an emotional hell. And that being said, there is a thought that's going to come across your mind like, I need to get the hell out of here in a quick,
Yes.
right? Like I need to get a
Yes.
getaway car, but
Yeah.
don't like stand your ground and know you're a nurse and you have a lot of
Yes.
support around you, although you may not think so in that moment. There are so many people that want to come and surround you and help you. So don't feel alone. Don't feel ashamed. We make mistakes every day as humans. And so I think I wanted to piggyback on, those new nurses, even student nurses. We have a lack of confidence, when it kind of comes to these things and understanding that we do have a license. So, what are some things that can help new nurses or even student nurses understand and build confidence around the legalities of nursing, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I love it. I love it. I love it because myself and then, we talked about Dr. Susan Davis. She's like rescue RN. She talks
Mhm.
about this in response to even people doing basic life support. It's the confidence. It's the confidence. And if we don't have the confidence, you know what we don't do? We don't act. And so I tell a nurse, you do have the words. You put that in a manila folder. What are you putting in your manila folder in your portfolio? The rules and regulations that dictate your professional license, because that's your confidence. When they come to you and let's just say they're trying to get you to take an unsafe assignment, then they come to me, right? And I'm like, well, 21711 S says that I can't do that. That's you making me the assignment, and T is me accepting that assignment. So, and I'll just read it. And it also goes on to talk about your own competence, but it says make assignments to others that take into consideration client safety and that are commensurate with the educational preparation, experience, knowledge, and physical and emotional ability of the person to whom the assignments are made. That's under the rules and regulations that dictate my professional license.
Mhm.
And then T would be, so that's the charge nurse making me that assignment. And I asked them, so that's what S says. T says, accept only those nursing assignments that take into consideration, and it says the same thing. So I asked that charge nurse, I said, so are you asking us both to violate the Nurse Practice Act? And then medical malpractice is knowingly and willingly taking on an unsafe assignment. And I'm quoting the lawyer from my own nurses association, because I asked him a question in front of all the nurses so that they would know, because I already knew this knowledge. And I said, sir, I know you love me. So will you please educate my people? So we're talking about staffing. So I already read 217, right? I said, so just to move to civil litigation, sir, if I knowingly and willingly take on an unsafe assignment, let's just say in the ICU, is that the definition of medical malpractice? It is. Thank you, sir. The nurse was like, what? And gasped. I said, will you please repeat that for the nurses? If you knowingly and willingly, because your job is not making you, is your job holding a gun to your head? No, no one's making you be in charge. No one's making you take an assignment. And so what are you going to use? And what are you going to put in your manila folder? You're going to put those things in. You're going to be unanimated because you're not going to be like me. You're going to be just reading and you're just going to say, I'm just trying to clarify, because you're inexperienced, right? You're under 5 years. So that means you're still trying to build your nursing house, right? I talk about the nursing foundation, and you're going to say, I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm just reading to you what it says under the rules and regulations. Help me out here, sister.
Yeah.
And it's not, and then they're like, wait, what did you just say? I don't know. That's what Texas says, right? You know this, right, nurse? And then they're going to pause. And that's what you want them to do. And that I also double down. If this continues to happen, why are you there?
Mhm.
Why are you there? They don't deserve you. As far as I'm concerned, you're a nurse. And if they're not willing to invest in you, then move it along. If they're not willing to invest in your year nursing residency, then move it along. They don't deserve you. Your residency program is part of your foundation and you deserve that. We are not given those tools that we need. And so invest in you. You are valuable. And if you don't, Emily and I are here to tell you, You need that foundation and start. They need nurses. And so, you know what? When you go to take a job, I'm interviewing them. What are you offering me? And it's not just about the pay. That is a huge piece of it. Yes. But it's also what are the resources available to me? Do I have a nurse educator? Let's just talk about the cath lab. Because the last cath lab I was in, we couldn't get a nurse educator who had any cath lab experience. So who am I going to for questions?
Right.
No one. No one. So you do have the tools, and that's why you're going to follow Emily and I as well. And you're going to use scripted language that we teach you, because you are a nurse and you should be questioning. And if you're in a place, sometimes I even told nurses they've left the unit and gone to a different unit and it was night and day. There it is. There it is. Go to even a different unit where they support you. If you walk into a place and you're already getting spidey senses and they're not supporting you, Lori Brown, RNJD, speaks about this in her
Mhm.
book. She represents nurses. She speaks about this in her book. You already have a target on your back. So why are you staying in a place that doesn't support you?
Absolutely.
So leave. You're far too valuable as a nurse. We extend a hand out to one another. We do not shame one another. We do not disrespect one another. That's part of the culture that I want to change. And I have been the one, especially when and I say baby nurse respectfully, because I have mad love for them. If there's a doctor yelling or I walk over, I'm like, what's happening?
Mhm.
I just don't tolerate it. I
Yeah.
will not tolerate it. And I will pull that physician away from that nurse, and then never in front of the patient. We never do anything in front of the patient,
Yeah.
right? You say something witty, you say something like, hey, I got your pen over here, doctor.
Mhm.
Right. And then you get them away from that nurse, and you walk over and you start to de-escalate some things, but we don't tolerate that kind of behavior, nor
Yeah.
from one another. Right. Another seasoned nurse is speaking disrespectfully, or even the opposite. No. Right. That's when one of us gets involved. And then we kind of help break that up, but that's never disrespectful. A nurse leader asked me in the cath lab to precept another nurse who had just come back to the profession, and probably just wasn't a good fit in our environment. It's toxic and needed just a little bit more love to learn. So I went to the nurse leader who asked me to precept her because her staff was shitty. And I went back to her and I was like, oh, I just don't know if this is the place, but there's like, I don't know, 5,000 other openings. This nurse leader said, we don't reherd cats. I was disgusted. I almost started crying. I was like, I mean, we were in her office and the door was closed. I said, I don't even know what you just said.
Yeah.
I said, she's a valuable nurse. Just because she doesn't fit in this toxic environment has
Right.
nothing to do with her ability to grow or have
Yeah.
skills. The
Yeah.
cath lab alone is just a hard environment, and you have toxic people standing here. You have one nurse and you need 10. You know
Yeah.
why you only have one staff nurse and I'm here as the float pool and you asked me to precept one of your nurses? Huh. I don't know. It's a big mystery.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
weird.
I went to that nurse and I was like, what you do with this is up to you, but I most certainly wouldn't stay here, because I also knew that if they terminated her, that may be grounds for reporting her to the board of nursing, because most people don't know in that book I just pulled out that oftentimes if you're terminated from an organization, that does rise to the level of you being reported. So I know I was all over the place, but we're far too valuable. What we do is far too important, and what we do is very hard. And if you step into a place that doesn't even support you, and now you just had someone die, you know what I mean? All these
Yeah.
things are going to be put on top of you. And now you don't even have a good foundation and you don't have a supportive environment, which you deserve much better than leave there. Start talking to your other people, start getting on some of these other Facebook groups. We all know about them, and finding a place where they're already supporting nurses and
Yeah.
where you're going to fit right in and you're going to be able to build on your own foundation. Good luck finding that spot. But I
Mhm.
mean, right now it can be rough out there, but I promise you there is a spot for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so important to gain that confidence and then understand with that confidence if are in a toxic environment or taking crap that you shouldn't be. And I always tell when I was teaching nursing students, if a doctor yells at me on the phone or if somebody's yelling at me on the phone, one
Bye.
way I need to negate this, I'm like, wait, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Can you repeat what you just said? And what that does, it allows them to just notice that they yelled at you, and they're probably not going to do it again. So it just gives them a little bit of self-awareness, and you're kind of throwing it back on them, being like, hey, don't be an asshole, like, can you talk to me like a civilized human, right? So I think that's really important to, like we were talking about, just build that confidence, know your scope of practice, get that handbook. Don't buy a Littman. You don't need it. Just buy a handbook instead. It's way more valuable than
That
any
was
Littman.
great. That was
It's going to get
great.
stolen anyway. So buy yourself a scope of practice book. And you're going to find Maggie speaking at Modern Nurse Fest on October 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So excited about this. And, come and listen because legal nursing is so important and what she has to say is so important. And if you're a nurse that's interested, especially I find nurses that are introverts work really good as legal nurses because you can go in and you can bust out, you can do your stuff, you can communicate with like non-medical professionals, and
Yep.
it's a really cool way to go. So if you're interested in legal nursing, check out Maggie's intro into legal nursing course that she has. And that's a really good segue into learning more, right? About just legal nursing in general. And then what else do they find in that course that you have?
Sure. That it did change my life. I mean, honestly, because the more that you understand, so I'm not doing that. I do it. I saw. So it is a good transition. Any nurse can be a legal nurse, even if you've had discipline. Let me say this again. And I saw a job posting for a nurse at the bottom. It said, even if you have discipline, you're not going to be an expert nurse because you're going to have to get on the stand. But they're in the first like 15 minutes of the 4-hour course that I teach that's recorded online. I talk about I think there's 150 or so things that you can be as a legal nurse. We automatically go to legal nurse consultant and expert, but those are just two types of legal nursing. So I like a handout, as you know. So every hour has a handout, roughly 30 pages with clickable links. And then I have a 6-month strategy for success. Because if you do want to be a consultant, like you referenced, or an expert, you got to set up a business because you
Right.
can't take a check as Maggie or Emily. But if you choose not to do that, that's on you. But I do give you that foundation, how to, from a bank account to getting your EIN to setting that up, along with templates of reports, of chronos, of, I don't want to get into all but there is no shortage of links. I gathered all the stuff that I have done over the last 10 years and put it in something that's very affordable. It is only $500. Some of these courses can be $10,000. And I don't want you to spend that money on something that you don't even know that you need. So I created this that can get you started. And if you choose to go to the American Association of Legal Nurses Consultants, they have that certification that you can sit as for an RN if you've been practicing for 5 years, and they have those modules. But don't spend the money on that if you don't want to do that. So I
Yeah.
teach you how to touch and feel some stuff. My first crossover was a border nursing investigator. I didn't need to take any additional training,
Yeah.
right? So I teach nurses there's things that you can do because maybe you don't want to start a business, but I still want to be a legal nurse. I am an introvert and you want to sit and you want to work some stuff out. But nurses oftentimes like, oh, I'm going to swing back to the confidence. Feel like they don't have the confidence. I'm like, why? You know what? The lawyer doesn't give a crap about, you're not expected to sit here with legal knowledge. You're expected to look at the medical record and reproduce your nursing knowledge. So I tell nurses, stop with this confidence as well in the legal world. They're not expecting you to come with any legal knowledge, love. You may learn some of that stuff, and I'm going to teach you some of that stuff along the way in an affordable fashion, but that's not your gift to them. So don't get hung up on this stuff. You can do whatever you want. I'm going to double down this again. You're a nurse, you're a nurse, you're a nurse, you're a nurse. And yes, an LPN can be a legal nurse. Yes, an RN, an NP, a CRNA, even if you have discipline on your license, anyone can be a legal nurse.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks. That it's so important to understand like these modern careers that are popping up for nurses that, you can make a lot more money like with a lot of the stuff that is beyond traditional nursing, and the box nursing is what I like to call it. So, stepping outside of the box, learning these things. And what I love about Maggie's intro course is that it's very affordable, and I'm all about some ROI, return on investment, because that's why I'm a 3-time doctoral dropout for nursing because the return on investment was just not there. And,
Yeah.
I made those decisions to go back in because I had a nursing supervisor that was like, if you go get your doctorate, you will make X number of dollars an hour and you'll climb the corporate ladder. Once I got into those courses, I was like, no, this is not who I am. This is not me, right? I was lacking confidence in that moment. looking to my nursing supervisor, right? So it's really important to, get to know yourself as a nurse. And so you can build that confidence so you can make those decisions for yourself, not allowing somebody else to push you into that. So, if you're listening, if you're a new nurse, a student nurse, check out this intro course. It's definitely a great return on investment because I know legal nurses can make a lot of money if
I
they want,
recorded
right?
it. I recorded it because another nurse
Yes.
came back to me when I was at the conference, and one of the wound care nurses came up to me because she took my course. Or no, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, one of the wound care nurses' friends came up to me. She's like, "Oh my God, Maggie, when you teach it again?" Because she's made already $20,000 in 6 months, and I was like, I will guess I will record it. So I ended up recording it so people don't have to wait for me. So I already know that there is an ROI,
Yeah.
as evidenced by, these nurses that come back to me
Yeah.
making money.
Yeah. Yeah. Way more than my $100,000 doctorate that I was going to get at Vanderbilt, right? Like that's it's really mind blowing when we step into like the nursing education realm and how many certifications people get. And I just want to make a really important point that as a legal nurse, and just stop me if I'm wrong, you don't have to have a certification, right? You can get that education or learned experience, right? It's really how you sell yourself. Is that kind of the
Yep.
the caveat as a legal
Yep.
nurse? Is that okay?
So I don't have one certification, just like you. I just
Yeah.
have MSN behind my name.
Yeah.
I've never sat for any of these tests. I've been a board of nursing investigator, so I did go to that training, right? So
Yeah.
I had to take that national training, but I've been a civil expert, administrative expert, a consultant. I mean, an advocate. I've been a patient advocate, and the education that I got is through the two books that I tell nurses that they should purchase under $50, right? The American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, I picked up at the Goodwill. The other
Mhm.
one, Nurses in the Law, I picked up at the Goodwill bookstore, and I
Yeah.
teach from those books. I teach nurses you can buy the third edition, which is $250, go right on ahead. But I don't teach from that. That's great education, and you already know. I've self-taught myself, you've self-taught yourself
Yeah.
some things. So I'll provide you with some of the basics. What you choose that is your what you choose in the 6 month strategy for success. I work some of the questions backwards that you would have to sit for that test for the AALNC, and they're the only one who holds, able to do that. So I
Great.
sprinkle that through all the handouts, and in the 6 month strategy for success, that handout is 70 pages.
Yeah.
But if you work through that, and I break it down over 6 months, and it's 70 pages a week between those two books, and it's very affordable. I break it down into something that's tangible. And just like you said, if you choose to add this additional education to your, tool belt, I'm more than happy to help you do that, but you don't have to. You would always just work with the legal team, and there's going to be a legal nurse consultant already there, or someone who was there. I would always ask the legal nurse consultant or the attorney, please send me the last 3 reports that you liked. I have the nursing words, but oftentimes where the nurses don't have the confidence is that report. And so you already know, when we're taught different computer systems, different charting systems, I tell nurses, why are you getting stressed out about this report? You learned all these other different types of software, right? You already have a report in front of you that the attorney gave you. You're just going to mirror that, and then you're just going to deposit your words how they have already given you a gift. So
Yeah.
those are the things that I teach. So thank you for asking. Once
Yeah.
again, I get very long-winded, but I think it's a great crossover, and it does change your bedside practice. I promise you, your documentation and the stuff that you start to see around you becomes way different, because now you know what civil litigation looks like, or border nursing litigation, and you're like, wait, I saw this. I'm not going to stand here. No
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And I love that you do the 6 month setup for the business because like we were just talking about, like if I would have graduated with my doctorate, there is no business plan. There is no like,
right.
how can you make money with this? It's like, here's a piece of paper, now go figure it out. But so I love that you do that. And I think that's so important because nurses sometimes lack that education or even understanding of how to be an entrepreneur or even where to start, right? It can get so overwhelming if you don't have direction. So thank you for providing that business piece in your course as well. So Thank you so much, Maggie. This has been such an enlightening experience, and I've learned so much. I'm not in the legal nursing realm, and I've learned so much today just by listening to you. So I'm excited for people that want to take your intro into legal nursing. I'm sure there's a plethora of information in there. So you can find Maggie at Modern Nurse Fest on October 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come and see her. She's going to be talking about legal nursing. Of course, it's online, so everybody around the world can come. All nurses are welcome. And anything else that you want to add to the conversation or end with?
Thank you for all you do. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me on. Thank you for exposing other realms of nursing that we can all do. So I really appreciate you, and thank you for just being a nurse. I love my people. So
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Of course, yeah. And some just takeaways. If it's not documented, it's not done right. And if you see something, say something, right? Those are like some big takeaways in the legal world that all nurses can do. So thanks again, Maggie. I hope you have an awesome day.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. Thank you, sister.
Thanks.